we are incredibly honored to welcome our distinguished plenary speaker who joins us all the way from Hosei University in Tokyo, Japan. Please join me in welcoming Professor Robert Strout. Dr. Robert Strout is a Tokyo-based professor whose work examines how emerging technologies, particularly generative AI, are reshaping learning, communication, and knowledge practices in English studies. His research focuses on critical AI literacy, learner agency, and the human dimensions of technology-mediated pedagogy. An internationally recognized TEDx speaker, he supports educators in navigating innovation without losing the reflective, interpretive, and relational core of humanistic education. He is the founding editor of the University Grapevine, a global practitioner-focused publication, and the creator of Cultural Club, an international virtual exchange program that fosters intercultural dialogue and collaborative meaning-making among learners worldwide. Today, Professor Strout will guide us through a fascinating and highly relevant exploration titled The Weight Behind Us, The Deep Ahead, Charting AI's Expanding Role in English Studies. Professor Strout, the virtual floor is yours. We are eager to hear your insights.
Thank you very much indeed for such a warm introduction. Can you hear me okay?
Yes, we can hear you.
Wonderful, great. Well, it's an honor to be here. Thank you so much for having me come along. As you heard, I am in Tokyo. I've been in Japan about 20 years now, teaching in higher education, but I'm originally from the UK and I travel a lot. So I present a lot around the world each year. So I'm trying to always get new perspectives and new visions of education and where technology may be taking it. So today I'll be talking about not only AI, but also for students, teachers, researchers, and authors, what directions we may be needing to take in the next few years, because it's been a long road with AI already, and the next 5 years or so may be very, very different. So I'd like to kind of touch on that today as well. So without further ado, I don't believe I have too much time, so I'm going to run through as quick as I can. Now I'm hoping my share screen will come up. Is this coming through okay?
Yes.
Great, thank you. So as you heard, the title is The Wake Behind Us, The Deep Ahead. So charting AI's expanding roles in English studies. So where have we been, where are we, and where are we going in terms of AI within studies right now? So I'll talk about the first wave. There are going to be 4 waves I'm going to discuss today. The first 2 or 3 you'll be very familiar with. So the first wave was this kind of impact of AI when it arrived, this amazing thing. Second was the panic button, when we all decided critical thinking was at risk. What kind of things do researchers and educators need to start focusing on? And this is probably where many of us are right now. I think the panic has kind of calmed down, and we're starting to think about, okay, where does AI actually lie within research and pedagogy as well? And what comes next? I'll discuss this at the end today. I think it's very important we have a vision of where we'll be going, what will be the next wave of technology or AI that hits us, perhaps in the next couple of years. So very quickly, let's summarize the first wave. What happened? Well, I think many of us remember AI suddenly coming onto phones. I mean, it's not a new technology, of course, but the accessibility and the personalized side of it had an enormous impact. And we were very mesmerized by this. Everything was exciting. You know, what can it do? Can it make my work life easier? It certainly can, right? But then things started to get out of control, didn't they? The gap between the information and the learning began to widen. And that's what led into this second wave. This time we started to think about, okay, what's actually happening with AI? This thing has come out of the box. We can't put it back. And well, a lot of us said this, it's making our students lazy. Perhaps it is, perhaps it was, but we are moving forward from this now. I think it changed into panic, didn't it? Maybe some of you still feel in this second wave right now. Perhaps it's time to move out of the second wave. As a researcher, certainly, and as a teacher, I would say, not just saying, you know, students are cheating, they're getting more stupid, they're addicted to technology or to AI. Well, it's our job as a teacher to move forward from there, because it's not going away, of course. So how do we deal with that in terms of research and how we teach and possibly assess our students? So this is the big part of what I'll talk about today, which is the third wave. And I think many of us are still in this wave. It may last a little bit longer. This is the mission that we're on now, to think very critically as educators, as authors, as publishers, about what AI is and where it belongs and how we need to change with it as well. So the four key areas are how we can connect better with students, how we can guide them a little bit better, reflection on the student's part as well, and assessment. This will be a big part of what I talk about at the end as well. How can we change how we assess people? So connection is the first one. Well, we need to think about ways of understanding what students are doing a bit better. One of them is thinking about their workflow support. So we need to sit with them more. We need to spend more time with them. I think many educators feel they're not sure what students are actually doing with AI. Diaries is becoming a big thing. Perhaps get some feedback or just general discussions with your students about what they're actually doing with AI at the moment. Level of feedback more now. And effective tracking, how they feel about the use of the technology rather than what they produce with it. So we've got to work towards things like their emotions, their confidence, when they feel frustrated by it. Now, one thing I developed, there's, one person with their microphone. I don't know how to turn it off. It's very loud. Yug. If they could go mute, it'd be very helpful. Thank you. This is something I developed called the AI engagement checklist for instructors. You are free to actually share this, to use it yourself if you engage for instructors. You are. Thanks. Yeah. Microphone off. It's very distracting. That's great. Thank you so much. That's much better. So this is the AI engagement checklist for instructors. And I produced this a couple of years ago, but it's still very valid in terms of not only teaching practices and understanding of students, but also potentially if you're thinking about this direction for research or publications into where AI should be heading with learning. Classroom engagement or learner engagement is always going to be a very good focus for AI research. So just to go through this very quickly, I won't have time today to go through it completely, but what I generally look at is how AI is affecting the behavior, the emotions, things like the cognitive processes, the critical thinking, the social interactions, and the agentic engagement. You know, are students being proactive because the technology is present? So generally, this is just a checklist to think about what your students are doing when you observe them. Because of AI, are they doing more or less work? You could say they were doing more, for example. They may be speaking more in class because you introduce technology. Perhaps you're not sure. This means a no change or not sure. If they're participating more, if they're taking more chances. And perhaps there's less equal participation because of the introduction of AI. So from a research perspective, you could perhaps look at the impact of AI or technology being introduced into classroom settings, and then either having observational data or perhaps feedback from students to see what kind of impact that's having on their actual engagement, their real connection and efforts they're making with the learning. And this checklist is just a starting point. You can look at their emotions. Are they thinking more deeply? These are more difficult concepts to research, of course. I think behavioral engagement, you can just look at and see, right? Cognitions, emotions, you have to kind of ask them and make judgments on those things. But social engagement and agentic engagement, we can see those things as well. Because of the introduction of technology, are students talking to each other more? Are they asking the teacher more questions? How do we know that's happening or not? So has the introduction of the technology had a positive effect or a negative effect? And these are wonderfully important directions for research in the next few years with AI, as we certainly get away from thinking, wow, what can it do? What are the amazing functions it's capable of? That's kind of being overdone, in my opinion. What we really need to be looking at is the impact on the actual students themselves. What kind of reaction are they having to this technology being used? Those kind of articles will be much more publishable within the next couple of years, I guarantee you. And I'll skip over this, but just this, if you have an observation scheme, this is a good starting point to think about if the technology is or isn't having a good impact on the learning process. So that's Connect. Some universities are going very far with this in Tokyo, actually. Actually, in Japan, Keio University have just launched the end of last year an initiative to really let students guide the learning processes that are going on in that university. So the AI environments are being shaped by the needs, habits, and the learning workflows of the students. And this kind of digital infrastructure is a very fluid, interesting environment they're playing with to try to look at how students really use AI and align that with the actual course design. So perhaps if you're a teacher and you're thinking about how can I research or publish or improve my classes or my courses with AI, perhaps you might consider letting the students guide how you do that, because they are the ones at the end of the day who are using AI. So they're active partners in shaping it within that university. It's a very interesting approach, and I've been following it closely. Not much feedback on what's actually happened yet, but I'll be very interested to find out in the next few months how it's gone. So it's very diverse. You were talking about different disciplines, different subjects. It's not the same for every type of course as well. If you're teaching a language, if you're teaching history, mathematics, a science subject, the way that students will be using AI will be different probably in all those cases. So the university here, Keio University, is looking across it as a large kind of study, and it's fantastic. So maybe as a teacher, you can do the same. Okay, so that's Connect. I'd like to talk about guidance for students. Perhaps maybe some of us are doing better than others. Some countries are certainly doing a lot better than others at this. Things like how much we allow students to use AI or technology for essays, for example, or written reports. Perhaps you might want to go as far as having kind of a contract with students, kind of agreements written with the students and what they can and cannot do, or the impact of that. I'm not a fan of this. I think it creates a bit of distrust, and I think we need to just accept that students are going to use AI, and we need to work with that rather than trying to block it. But this is one approach. And policies, contextual policies, thinking about what students need to be doing for specific courses, and also specifically for certain assignments you've given them as well. And these all obviously offer wonderful amounts of research opportunities, very valid as well. Here's what I really like that TESOL have actually published a couple of times, just to give you an idea of a guideline. I'm not sure about your own teaching setting, your own institutes, perhaps your own policies personally about what students can and can't do with AI. But I think creating levels like this is a good start. For example, number 1 at the top, you would tell students for an assignment you gave them, you cannot use AI at any point for this assignment. Now, you would probably have to be around them a lot for that to happen, because as soon as they're out of your sight, what's the first thing I'll do? Probably use AI, right? And it goes down to many different levels. For example, number 5 is AI exploration. It doesn't say use AI as much as you want. I don't think there should be a level that says that. But this one's telling them, if you can see the bottom line there, you should use AI creatively to solve the task, potentially co-designing new approaches with your instructor. So this is telling them you can use AI, but it's a partner, it's not leading you. So it's very important that we develop these kind of guidances. There's a huge amount of potential to publish on this stuff in the next few years. If you've developed your own scheme, I strongly recommend you to test it and get feedback and write perhaps a paper about it. There are a lot of books coming out about this stuff now. Stanford last year and into this year, very good university in the States, have been very good. I've been very much admiring the way they've handled the guidance. They've been very clear in defining exactly what needs to be done in each course and assignment level. They've given power to departments to actually set their boundaries. So rather than a top-down policy-making scheme, which I'm not a believer in, they're giving power to the departments and the teachers to actually come up with what these guidances should be for students. And it's assignment level, which is very important because each assignment is different, maybe has a different mode of presentation or, delivery. And the instructors, are actually required at Stanford to articulate what is and isn't allowed with AI to their students. So it's not something that they're just left to do. They are told specifically, you need to have these conversations with students. You need to guide them. And I still feel 2026, a lot of places are a little bit behind with this. And again, this makes good research and it makes very good teaching practices also. So reflection, I'll move on to this now. We need to keep students thinking. I think this is where my personal passion really comes with research and my presentations and my publications. Perhaps some of you there feel exactly the same way as the way I'm going to talk about AI right now. There are certain ways we can get students to think about the ways AI is good and is not so good in terms of things like the way we think and the way we analyze things. One great activity, for example, and this is very much a great thing you could publish on as well, is analyzing the difference between AI and human input and output. So, for example, something I've done with my students a lot is have them compare. So maybe something written, a paragraph or a song or a poem by AI, and one written by a human, and then they have a discussion, a debate, and actually write a report about the differences. So we're really digging deep with students to really reflect on what AI can and cannot give us and why the human can also remain important. Audits, very fun as well. You can have students, for example, create something with ChatGPT, maybe Claude, maybe with Copilot, maybe with Gemini, and then choose which ones they think is the best and why they think it's the best. And again, this is supporting critical thinking, not taking it away, which is what a lot of people are worried about right now. Prompt design challenges, I love these. For example, students can have just 2 prompts or 3 prompts to generate something as a competition in your classroom. And then they can vote on who created the best, for example, song with just 3 prompts. So they have to learn how to actually master the prompting and the technology, not be led by it. They have to gain control of it. Excellent teaching for students, makes very good research again. Fact checking, another good thing for reflection. As everybody here today knows, me as well, we cannot believe everything AI tells us, and AI will even tell you it made a mistake when you point out it made a mistake. Students still seem very unaware of that. So having them fact check about these things will definitely build up their sense of understanding of its limitations. And you can also have debates with students. Just talk to them. When is AI cheating? This is my favorite topic of the year with my students. What is cheating? What is not cheating? We get very deep into that topic, and it's fantastic for reflection, and you're really setting them up to move forward as people with the technology that's going to be around them a lot as they grow up. I've done a TED talk on this. I feel very passionate about keeping students thinking. It was titled A Missing Piece in Today's AI World. This was about a year ago I did it, but it's still very valid. I also generated completely free teaching materials that you can get on my website. None of this costs anything. And the video is on YouTube. It's had about 100,000 views so far. Please feel free to share it with your students if this topic of reflection with your students is something you would very much like to push with them. So you can just go to www.robertstroud.org or get in touch with me. That's fine. I can help you with that. And I'm a big fan of the Prompt Engineering Championships. I don't know if you've heard of this. Actually, in Dubai last year, I believe it's going ahead right now, or maybe I've even finished now this year. Actually getting students or people, not just students within universities, people like engineers, artists, everybody to actually think about how to use AI. And it's a competition. So they have to actually learn the strategies, how to judge the use of AI, not just be passively led by it. They have to iterate and critique and refine all those prompts that they put in. And you can see different topics there, things about art, videos, gaming, coding. So we're really giving the power back to the human with these kinds of competitions. And creativity, that's what's human. That's what's being maintained in these competitions. And it evaluates the AI limitations and the failures. So we're also showing people AI can be wrong. We can master it, though. It's an incredibly valuable tool, but you have to be in the driving seat. And it's also showing that, we have to really think about things. Metacognition, very important, not just automation and being led by AI. So again, perhaps wonderful opportunities for competitions for your students, perhaps research opportunities to publish about what you find with those things. So the last thing I'll come to, and this is a big one, is assessment. So let's have a think about what's happened with AI. Anyone in the room there today or online who's teaching writing courses, that could be language courses, that could be anything, that could be teaching science, history, anything at all, where you ask your students to give you something written. Now, things have become very hard. And we have to think about what we're really looking at in students now, because a product, just asking them to give us something, have become more difficult. In my opinion, I think those are kind of dead. I think we really have to now look at it in a very different way. So process, how are students learning? What decisions are they making as they go along? This could be a very, very good direction for teachers. The difficulty with this now, though, of course, is it could be a lot more work. And I think there's a lot of research needed in this area. If you can come up with a way to do this, I think you have a jackpot for research in terms of publications, perhaps even books. How can we move the way we assess students in a direction that supports the learning, but allows them to continue to use the technology they now have? And just looking at something they produce like an essay just won't do it. Oral defenses. So anyone who's done a master's or a PhD, you'll be very aware that you have to defend what you did, like an interview at the end. Perhaps we need to be moving more towards that. Again, the issue with that is time. Perhaps, though, some interesting things I've seen is you could have AI interview them. But I'm also a little bit skeptical about how you can defend that as well. But interesting. Checkpoints for AI-free use. Throughout your teaching or throughout your research projects, have perhaps a class where AI is banned. It's not allowed. And you can really check in and see what they can and can't do when they're not allowed to be using it. That's another good way for us to assess things. And maybe go as far as to assess how well they can use AI as part of your actual course. So how well are they collaborating and using AI to get what they want? If you think that's a valid skill for their future, which I certainly do, perhaps it's time we start incorporating that into our own rubrics as well. So UNESCO last year, I'm going to include this article again because I don't think anything's changed since a year ago, had an article titled, "What's Worth Measuring? The Future of Assessment in the AI Age." And this still is a question we haven't quite answered. And I think this is going to take us a few more years. And some of us are going to be faster than others to answer this. So from recall to reasoning, not just memorizing, not just putting something down and learning it and putting it on a piece of paper or on a computer screen. We need to be looking at how students think, how creative they can be as well. And process, it's a huge thing. We really need to make sure that we're pushing students towards the way they think about things and not just looking at the way they produce something at the end of that journey, but all the things they did along the way. Authentic contexts. I'm not a huge fan of this, but I will explain it. UNESCO was talking about designing real-world locally grounded tasks that AI cannot easily replicate. So it's talking about things like having students talk about their own life, perhaps things that AI wouldn't know, so that they can't cheat with AI. I still think that's just a safeguard against AI, which we really should avoid doing, but it is an approach that's recommended, something you can research as well. And again, defense, dialogue, discussing with students. It's very obvious and very clear. I think many of you have known this. When you ask a student about something they produced that they did with AI, that they didn't do it, you can tell very quickly the way the discussion goes. And collaboration. Think about how they're using AI as well. The ethics of it. Do they understand what they're responsible for? Do they understand what it may or may not be doing to them by just completely relying on it? So these kind of things are very important for assessment. These are gold mines, in my opinion, for research in the next 3 to 5 years. We need to stop researching about what AI can do, and we need to start looking at these kind of things that students may be doing with it, and the way we need to be pushing them to actually put them in the right direction to prepare them for the future they've got coming. So that's the third wave. That's the way I've been presenting for the last 2 or 3 years. Obviously, I've been updating it as things have changed. And, you know, what we've talked about the first wave, the second wave, where we started to panic. The third wave, possibly where many of us are now. Where do we put it? But there is a fourth wave coming. And I think this is where you really want to be thinking as well. Not just where do we put AI, but what comes next? What is an AI world going to look like in 5 years from now? So if it's saturated, and I bet everybody here today is probably using AI in some form or another, I think it can be a very positive thing. I'm not anti-AI whatsoever. I think AI is fantastic, but you have to master it in a way that makes you more efficient, keeps you thinking, keeps you creative, keeps you humanity. But I do worry about what comes next if we're not careful as educators. So it could be this. The fourth wave could be about human AI co-creation. So how good are students at working together with AI to do things? It could be about the process assessment. I have a feeling this will be a very important thing in the next few years, and we will start to see a lot of publications, a lot of books, a lot of plenaries and keynotes talking about how we now assess students. And this goes across all disciplines. We need to keep the thinking there, and we need to look at what decisions they're making along their journey. Meta-learning focus could be another one. Teaching them directly how to think, how to learn, as you might call it. And the other one would be AI stewardship. So are they really being responsible with AI? Are they kind of just taking it and just using it as quickly as possible and not worrying about consequences or, you know, where everything's going? Because once they leave the classroom, if that's what they're doing, they may not go into a job that lets them do that. Perhaps they will, though. We don't know. But we need to be preparing them for the future. Sorry, the last thing I'll say is that I think it's going to be a combination of all these things. And my last message for you today is, if you are thinking of researching AI, if you are thinking about publishing about it, perhaps thinking ahead where we're going with the way we assess students and the way we get them to think about it is definitely the way you'll get yourself published in the next few years, rather than just looking at what it can do, because I think we're slightly moving past that now. Anyway, I would just like to say thank you so much for having me come along today. My website is robertstroud.org. You can find me on Facebook and LinkedIn as well. And yes, thank you very much. And I'm afraid I will have to be going quite soon, because I actually have another presentation online not too long. But thank you very much indeed for having me, and thank you very much for listening.
Thank you so much, Professor Robert Stroud, for such a brilliant, thought-provoking and timely address. And navigating the deep ahead of AI in English studies is a journey we are all actively living through. And your framework gives us an invaluable compass for the future.